Hey everyone, it's Dr. Danielle Clark here. You're with the Win-Win Women Network. This is episode 16 with Onwards with Dr. Danielle. We are here with Denise Funfar, Integrative Leadership and Life Coach. You'll remember her from episode 11 when she was here with us talking about healing from using self-compassion as a way of healing. We have her back today in this beautiful 11-11 energy. Really excited. And today's focus is, how do we meet overwhelm with self-compassion? For those of you who are here live, thank you for showing up. Please remember to stay after the episode. We're available for live Q&A. And for those of you who are catching the replay, no worries at all. It's the same good information and it's the same good energy. I know Denise is here to chat self-compassion and offer us some hands-on activities, which I'm really excited about. And so it is. Let's get into it. Hey Denise, thanks for joining us again.
Thank you for having me back. This is so fun.
It is. How's your 11-11 feeling today?
Feeling very expansive, especially when I get to chat with you. So very fun.
Flash. Thank you. Yeah, 11-11 is one of my numbers. I see it on the clock. I see it on receipts, and I felt today's flow was productive and easy. I think the 11-11 has given me a sense of ease, a little bit of grace. Yeah. So for those that haven't checked out episode 11, and I know they're putting it on their to-do list now, right? Let's do a quick recap. So you're a self-compassion guru, and I want to hear like your definition of self-compassion and what people need to keep in mind as it relates to self-compassion.
Yeah. So thank you. That's very kind of you to say that. The part that I love to study is these ancient practices, these concepts that tend to show up in all of the spiritual traditions across time, essentially. How are they now being reintegrated and once again really prioritized through the lens of science? And so we can think about things like acceptance. So acceptance of what is here, acceptance of how I'm showing up, how life is showing up, non-judgment towards what's happening in the present moment. And then this element of compassion, this element of curiosity for what's here. So this non-judgment of it. So these are the things that are often talked about as faith, right? I have faith that things are working out for me, or I believe that I am loved. I can trust the universe. This is how it shows up in a more of a spiritual lens. But now what's happening is that we're finding that these same things, these same perspectives that have helped us with the ups and downs of life, the tricky monkey brain, the challenges of interpersonal relationships and getting along, promoting well-being within the self, these things are still doing that. We're just understanding that they're doing it now. We're getting that it's rewiring the brain, helping to manage the nervous system, putting us into these states where we actually have access to love, to trust, to safety, all of these things that actually make us perform and also make us experience well-being. So I didn't totally answer your question. So it's specifically about compassion, specifically about compassion then. So it's the idea that we're recognizing that there is suffering happening, but there's an action component. We're not just recognizing, we're also taking action.
Ooh, okay.
Intention behind it. So we're not staying in that sort of empathy of I recognize that you're hurting or I recognize that I'm hurting. There's also this element of wanting to do something about it. So when we talk about self-compassion, it's the awareness of recognizing that I am struggling right now. I'm struggling. It's that mindfulness of noticing. And then it's that kind response. I'm struggling, and so therefore I'm showing up for myself. And I'm recognizing that struggle is a part of life, that I am not uniquely flawed or alone. There's the common humanity of recognizing that I'm part of the greater whole, and this is part of life.
How beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And I love the pairing because I think most of us will recognize when we're hurting, right? We're tired, we're frustrated, we're angry, that, those are easier things to recognize. But do we take the necessary action to self-soothe or to heal or to rise above? Isn't that interesting to know that you need the two for it to be full self-compassion? It's not just affirmations and, hey, Danielle, you've got this kind of talk. You need to break free, is what I'm hearing from you, and actually put in some change or some shift, whether it's big or transformational. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, so in the moment, you don't have to shift anything. You just have to be with what's here. That's the very first step. So Dr. Kristen Neff, she talks about fierce compassion. So that's like the going out in the world and that powerful action. Like if I'm in a situation that's really not serving me, it's like, no, I won't be treated this way. I'm going to go do something else. I'm going to take that action. But first, it's whatever is here, meeting that. So it doesn't matter why it's here in that moment. It's stopping, recognizing that it's here. And then you notice I automatically put my hand on my heart. That's one of the things we talked about last time, this soothing and supportive response. Something as simple as meeting the fact that I'm struggling with that response actually starts to calm us down, even at just a body level, right? So I'm just meeting what's here. This
You
is
feel it.
Yeah.
And it's subtle. So this action doesn't need to be revolutionary, right? It can just be, like you said, recognizing and then pausing, right? Recognizing and a hand on the heart. I am reading a book. Tell me if you've read it. It is The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. And I just finished The Surrender Experiment from him. And he does a really nice job helping the reader understand that the voice inside our head, the critic, the negative voice, isn't I don't want to use the word normal, but it isn't the way things need to be. It's self-created, and we don't need to lean into it as much as we think we do. We can observe the voice and not put fuel to the fire or choose to cling on to that energy. And I know that that's been helping me, is giving me a little bit more empowerment of realizing I can detach. I don't have to feed the story. And by me almost stepping away from the critic and realizing I can observe and be aware of the critic without feeding the critic, I view that as self-compassion. Would you agree?
Yeah, to many, compassion and mindfulness are the same thing, so we break these concepts apart, especially for a Western audience, because they are not something that we often do. I love the books that you mentioned. I have read those books. And I also think sometimes what can be so hard is that, how do I actually do that? So there are all these spiritual concepts that many of us know at this point. Like, yeah, I should be observing my thoughts. I shouldn't be getting too attached to difficult emotions. Okay, but how do I do that? And that's what I am that way. I'm very analytical. And so when I started mindfulness training 20 years ago, it's like, yeah, great idea, but how do I do that? And I think a lot of that comes just from sitting down and focusing on your breath, or going for a walk and focusing on your feet, this sort of mindful practice. But then there are courses like the one I teach that's created by Dr. Kristen Neff and Dr. Chris Kermer, where we're actually systematically breaking things down, so that how do I do that isn't this overwhelming concept. It's how do I do that? And then here are the exercises and the steps over a long period of time for learning how to implement this in practice, and not it just being one more thing I judge myself for because I'm not doing it right. And that was really the intention, I think, when you and I talked too. Well, we wanted to bring that to the audience, great idea. How do I do that? So
Yes,
that's a little
yes.
bit of that's a pretty good transition probably into some of the exercise.
Let's get there. How do we do
Yeah,
it? I love it
yeah.
because you have two activities
I have
and
two. So we're
I'm here with you and I'd love to experience
So
them.
I don't know if we can have feedback from the audience now, or if that comes at the end. Are you sort of the guinea pig for
It'll be me. It'll be me.
Great, great. So I mentioned the mindful self-compassion course, and that I love that course, and I teach that course regularly. And then also we're going to integrate some energy psychology that's also based around this concept of how do I do that in the moment? How do I treat myself with kindness? So just recognizing that we're incorporating different tools here, not sticking just within that lens. But this first exercise is by Dr. Kristen Neff, and it's called How Would You Treat a Friend? And so starting to get some recognition of how do we treat ourselves when we're having a hard time. And so we might just want to close our eyes or lower our gaze a little bit. Maybe taking a deep breath in, breathing out. And bringing to mind a time or maybe several times when a friend is struggling. So when they're feeling bad about themselves. And think about how you might respond to your friend in that situation. So especially when you're at your best. How would you treat a friend that's having a hard time? You
Whew,
don't.
I'm like in the
Yeah,
moment. I'm like in the moment. So a few
okay.
things
So
came
stay with that
to
for just a minute. I'm going to ask you at the
yes.
end. But just
Okay.
recognizing
Okay.
what comes to mind, and maybe even thinking about the tone that you would use with a friend, the body language. And it sounds like you got it. So let's erase that scenario and bring to mind a new one now. So think about a time now when you are feeling bad about yourself or struggling in some way. And how do you usually treat yourself in those situations? And once again, thinking about what tone might you use with yourself? Again, recognizing the body language. So how do you talk to yourself when you're struggling? And there's one more question here. All right. And then letting that go. And now considering the differences. So did you notice a difference? And if so, why? What factors or fears come into play that lead you to treat yourself differently from others, if that was the case? Okay, I'm ready. You're a good student. You're already ready to share.
Yeah, so powerful. I was there. I was there. So my reflections are this: a friend comes to me and they're having a hard time. I drop things immediately for them, right? It could be a text, I'm not doing well. Doesn't matter what's happening, I'm zoned into them, right? Okay, Denise, I hear you. I'm here for you. Can we connect, right? What do you need, right? So that's one thing I identified. And I also identified, like, I'm fully there, heart open, right? Like it's non-judgmental, it's curious, and sometimes not even curious, right? Like it's just being there, like heart-centered and open to create energy. And when it comes to myself, what I noticed is I can avoid much more when it's myself, when I'm struggling, right? I'm not like, let's put the work down and let's lean in as I do for my friends. For myself, it's like, I'm hurting, but I still have papers to grade, or I'm hurting, but I still have these 5 things to do. And so I felt the shift. You can even feel it as I'm talking. I plow through as opposed to stopping, right? And just giving myself the time. to feel and register. So that was a big difference that I identified. And also when I'm hurting and I need something, it's not so much of the self-talk, because I've worked on that through the years. So there's not a lot of the negative self-talk, but it's definitely more of a quickness and a brashness with myself. Like, come on, Danielle, right? You gotta, can you feel better? Like, dust the pants off, let's go. Where when a friend needs me, I don't put a time limit on things. It could be a 10-minute conversation holding space, or it could be a 2-hour conversation or holding space kind of a session. So that was a few of the insights that I came up with.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing. Yeah. So you're not alone. It sounds like you've already done quite a bit of work on the negative self-talk. A lot of the times what people realize, about 80% of people are harder on themselves than they are other people. And this exercise can even be pretty emotional sometimes when people are having this realization. And even when we have done work, maybe even a lot of work, like myself or yourself, we find these subtle saboteurs, like the hyperachiever, the one that just wants to plow through. That's my go-to as well. Yeah, I can just get it done. I teach self-compassion, but I can just get it done.
Different for me, right?
In the moment, yeah, those saboteurs show up. There's a great book, Positive Intelligence, where he talks about the sage and the judge, and then the different saboteurs that tend to show up. If somebody who's listening is looking for something that's not too woo-woo at all, but puts this really into practical performance language, that would be a good one to visit. And for people like me, we go that way. And for some people, it's just really not nice how we talk to ourselves. And this could be because of evolution. We talked about last time, if anyone wants to go back and listen, how we're wired to protect our bodies. We're not wired for happiness. Very often nowadays, when there's something to criticize, it's our self-concept.
Yeah.
I'm not as good as the other person because I didn't do this. I need to criticize myself. There's the societal aspect of this, definitely. Are we raising kids, especially in the West, more focused on achieving? There's that insecurity wound that tends to show up. And then there's also, obviously, when this is more severe in situations of trauma or abuse, or when we've had a caregiver that's really the modeled head or the modeled voice in our head, rather. And self-compassion can be incredibly helpful even then. Just the recommendation, even with exercises like this that can be more high level, it can be quite emotional. And we talked about backdraft, all the times we weren't loved shows up. And so we just want to go slow with a practitioner. And self-compassion can still be that self that really helps us to recognize that us too, because the research really doesn't suggest anymore that being self-critical will get us more results. And there are so many misgivings that show up. We do an entire section in the classes on misgivings. I'm being self-indulgent. I'm not going to achieve. It's a self-pity party. These things actually don't hold up. It's just common knowledge. It's not actually the truth. And so I think we're on the cusp of this sort of evolution when it comes to self-compassion. I think it's going to continue to grow in the same way that the self-esteem movement had good intentions, maybe had some not intentional consequences when it came to narcissism and some other challenges there, but it's coming. So yeah.
Well, I'm excited that we're ahead of the curve, right? And those listening. And I really enjoy this activity, and you're always great about putting things into practicality. This is something somebody can do on their own. This is something somebody can give to a friend of theirs. And even though, yes, I've done my work and continue to do my work with the self-compassion, I felt the difference. And I now have a stronger sense that I need to go inward, maybe even more than I expected. And if everyone listening can just take a little glimmer of where they might need to give themselves a little bit more understanding, compassion, and reflection and action, I think we've helped the movement more than we could ever know, right? Because it's just a little nudge forward. Yeah.
Yeah, just that remembering what we talked about in the beginning too. Just can you pause? Can you recognize that you are hurting? And then can you ask yourself, how would I treat a dear friend?
So good.
How would I show up for my loved child? Like, how would I show up for my dear friend? If we can just remember, and if nothing else, just to pause.
Yeah.
Just to pause, just for a second. So I think if nothing else, if you can just start thinking about, hey, I'm struggling. Bringing awareness to when you're struggling, that's really the number one thing. And maybe if it's accessible, where do I feel that in my body? And then maybe just placing that hand and say, what would I say to a good friend? So if we have time, I want to do one more exercise.
Yes, yes.
All right,
Yes.
wonderful. So this exercise is not from the mindful self-compassion methodology, but rather from energy psychology and
Okay.
EFT or tapping. And you might be familiar with this. I don't know.
I
Yeah,
am.
you are. Very nice. So what we do with this is one of the energy psychology techniques that has the most research behind it. So once again, there's studies that even go into the physiology of the body, lower cortisol levels, lower stress levels. So it can be used both for physical ailments, or the way that I use it is often for psychological challenges, like if there's anxiety or overwhelm or stress. And the fun thing about this, I especially use this with my very analytical, intellectually driven sort of head up clients, because it gives you something to do to stay in the body.
Oh, yeah.
Don't just like focus on your heart. It's like, oh, I'm tapping, I'm moving, I'm doing stuff. So it sort of helps us stay with the body in
That
this.
makes sense. The results driven. They need to feel
Yeah,
like
they need to be
doing
doing
something. I get it. Yes.
something to do. That's not something I read about in the research. It's just something I've noticed. But so what we do, we utilize the same points that you might use in something like acupuncture. So sometimes it's called psychological acupressure even. So we're tapping on points, and then it borrows from cognitive behavioral psychology also, in the way that we're using phrases and we're focusing on the stressor, and also in a way exposure therapy. So it's really this sort of ancient practice with the energies in the body with modern psychology. And some people will use it just for the modern psychology aspect that it works, and other people will go way into the chakras and the meridians. And honestly, it doesn't matter too much. Pick your choice there. Just give it a try and see if it works, because typically this is one of those that'll work on the spot a lot of the time. It works for longer, more deeper work and behavior change, but it also kind of works on the spot. Like, hey, I just had an argument with my spouse. I'm completely flooded with stressful hormones. What do I do with all these hormones? Like, what do I do? So let's try it if that's okay.
Yes.
So for this, we need to think about something that's giving us a little bit of stress. And with all practices, always, when you're learning, don't pick the 10. It's just going to overwhelm you. So on a scale of 1 to 10, pick something that's like a 3 or a 4.
Okay, that's a good tip. Okay, yeah.
I always think we want to get further. Again, you and I, a little bit achievers. I think probably a lot of people listening. Let's do it fast. It doesn't get us further. So let yourself be a slow learner. And that's something else that some of my mentors share. So think of something that is causing you a little bit of stress.
Got it.
And maybe enough that if it's in your practice, you can recognize it in your body. And if that's not in your practice, no problem. And what we're going to do is we're going to tap. And we're going to start tapping like this. But before we do that, so I said pick something that's like a 3 or a 4. So be aware really right now, if you were going to give this stressor a number on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give it?
I'd give it the 4.
4. Okay, great. So we're going to tap, so you can just follow along with me. So we start by tapping right here, and we're going to say the stressor out loud, and you can say it for yourself, right? So I'm just going to call it the stressor for these purposes, and you can just repeat after me and call it the stressor, and just noticing where in the body you feel that and bringing to mind your specific issue. So even though, so you want to repeat after me, even though I have this stressor, I fully and completely love and accept myself.
I fully and completely love myself.
Even though I'm experiencing this stress,
I'm experiencing this stress,
I choose to fully and completely love and accept myself.
to fully and completely love myself.
Even though I'm feeling really stressed out,
I'm feeling really stressed out.
I invite in the possibility
I invite in the possibility
of fully and completely
loving
and accepting myself.
loving and accepting myself.
So now we're going to tap right here. So where the eyebrow meets the eye, and just focusing on that stressor and the sensation in the body that accompanies it. That stressor. And then moving on to right here. So the side of the eye. You can do one side or both. That stressor. Continuing to focus on that situation that's stressing you out. And then under the eyes, that stressor. Making sure that you're breathing. And allowing your mind to continue to come back to that stressor. And under the nose, and we're just tapping lightly. That stressor. And then under the mouth. And then under the collarbones. And it's okay if it's not perfect. Intention matters. There's no reason to stress out about perfect placement at all. So really continuing to notice that stressor. And then under the armpit like this, that stressor. Ooh. But you might feel yourself wanting to yawn or take a little bit of a deeper breath. You might be feeling your shoulders drop, or you might not. You might have picked a much stressful situation that needs a few more rounds, and that's okay too. That's usually what I do.
Smile more than I normally do, and I'm loving it. Like it's just like a natural smile.
And then really, as you tap here, the last point, tuning into that place in the body again, and it might have shifted or moved. And just recognizing that stressor again. All right. And then taking a deep breath in. And a deep breath out. And tuning into the body again. And I know we're almost out of time, but I'm curious to ask you what number you're at now, and also how you're feeling in your body.
Oh, like I said, I just almost instantly just wanted to smile. A sense of ease washed over me. Maybe I'm at a 1.5. I mean, instant feeling lighter. I'm like, oh, I was stressing about that. And what's interesting, I really felt it in my head. And I'm wondering if maybe that's where a lot of my stress is being created. Again, the mind, right? Because when I was tapping, I was like, oh, I need this, like energy, get out of here. I'm feeling wonderful. I'm feeling almost like I just did a yoga session within the matter of minutes.
That's amazing. I'm so glad to hear it. Yeah. And if people are not feeling that way, that's okay too, right? It might have been even that this was just a little bit of an analytical practice. It was the first time. And also recognizing in the setup statement, I love and accept myself could be way too much. So maybe we ended with, I invite in the possibility of loving myself. So we can go really gentle. So it's not this sort of affirmations to cover anything up. It's it's working where we're at with the possibility of, is it possible that I could have some love for myself too? And when I work with clients, there's sort of this intuitive aspect of what needs to be said and what needs to be felt at the different points. And then clients sort of start to do that on their own too. And we can go through multiple rounds of sort of uncovering and working things out and how they relate to our conditioning and things that might have happened in the past. And so this was just a little preview and a little taste, but I hope that maybe it's a little bit applicable and something that can be used in the moment with overwhelm. And if people are interested in learning more, I invite them to either email me at hello@denisefunfar.com or visit my website and check out maybe one-on-one coaching or some of the group programs that I offer. So thank you for having me today.
Thank you. Beautiful, beautiful knowledge, beautiful offerings, beautiful you. Thank you so very much for sharing your wisdom, your practice, your spirituality, and your science with us. And those who are watching, thank you. Remember, it's the cracks in your heart that let the light shine through. We are going to be here every Friday for you. So every Friday, 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are here live with Onwards with Dr. Danielle on the Win-Win Women Network. Feel free to pop on and stay after for live Q&A. If you're not around for the live show, that's okay. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel at drdanielleclark.com. You can get a link right off there, and you'll always get an update when a new episode is released. With that, we will say farewell. Take care, everyone. Thank you, Denise.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.